The house was filled with laughter, the smell of roasted chicken, and the clinking of glasses as everyone gathered around the long wooden dining table. But no matter how much they tried to celebrate, everyone's eyes kept drifting toward the corner, toward the chair. Grandma's chair. The chair she had sat in every Christmas, every birthday, every Sunday dinner, was still there. Empty. Untouched. Waiting for her. The chair was not just wood and cushion, it was a piece of her soul. Her shawl still hung over it, and her knitting basket sat neatly by its leg, as if she would return any second. But she wouldn't. That truth burned in their hearts like fire. Every smile was broken, every laugh was cut short, because the emptiness in that chair screamed louder than any words. One by one, their faces changed. Some wiped their eyes quietly, others forced conversation, but the pain was the same for everyone. And then it happened. Tommy, the youngest grandson, only 8 years old, climbed onto the chair. He sat there, swinging his little legs, and whispered, "Grandma, if you're here, give me a sign." The room froze. The lights flickered. Everyone gasped. And just as suddenly, the sound of glass shattering echoed through the room. Grandpa's old photo frame had fallen off the wall. The family jumped up in shock, staring at the broken frame on the floor. Could it be? Was Grandma trying to say something? The room was silent. Hearts pounded. The children stared wide-eyed, and the adults exchanged nervous looks. Nobody dared to speak. And that was when Uncle James leaned forward, his face pale. This isn't just an empty chair," he whispered. "It means something. Something Grandma left behind." But what did he mean? The story did not begin with broken frames or flickering lights. No, it began much earlier, back when Grandma was still with them. Back when her chair wasn't empty, but full of warmth, stories, and laughter. Grandma Rose was the heart of the family. She had silver hair that glistened in the sunlight, kind eyes that always seemed to know when you were hurting, and a laugh that could fill the coldest room with warmth. To the children, she was magic. She baked cookies that tasted like love itself, told stories that made them dream, and always knew how to make their tears disappear. Every Sunday, the family gathered in her house. The chair at the head of the table belonged to her, and nobody else ever dared to sit there. It wasn't a rule, it was respect. Because everyone knew Grandma was the queen of that table. But behind her smile, Grandma carried secrets. Sometimes, when she thought nobody was watching, her eyes would turn sad. She would stare at that same chair she sat in, as if remembering something or someone from long ago. One rainy afternoon, little Tommy had asked, "Grandma, why do you always sit in that chair? Why not another one?" She had smiled, her wrinkled hand stroking his hair. "Because, my dear, this chair is more than a chair. It holds memories and promises I can't let go of." At the time, nobody understood what she meant. But soon, they would. Life in the family was not always easy. There were fights over money, disagreements between siblings, and moments when pride hurt more than poverty. Yet somehow, Grandma's presence kept everyone together. Her chair was not just furniture, it was a reminder that no matter how divided they were, they belonged to each other. But then came the day when everything began to change. It started with Grandma's cough. At first, it was light. Nothing serious. Just old age, she would say, brushing off their concerns with a smile. But as months passed, the cough grew deeper, harsher, stealing her breath and her strength. The family worried, but Grandma always insisted she was fine. She still cooked, still sang, still told her stories at the table. Until one Sunday evening, she didn't come out of her room at all. The children whispered nervously. The adults exchanged heavy looks. And finally, Uncle James went into her room, only to return with a pale face. "She's resting," he said softly, but his eyes told the truth. She was not resting. She was fading. The family began to take turns caring for her, but no matter how much they tried, nothing stopped the slow weakening of her body. And yet, even in her weakest days, Grandma still insisted on being carried to her chair at the table. She refused to let it sit empty. One night, when everyone had gone to bed, Emily, her eldest granddaughter, stayed back with her. Grandma sat in her chair, holding Emily's hand. "Promise me," she whispered, her voice frail, "that no matter what happens, this chair will stay where it is. Don't move it. Don't let anyone throw it away. It must remain." Emily, confused and teary-eyed, nodded. "I promise, Grandma." And with that promise, a chain of events began, events none of them could have imagined. The day Grandma's chair became empty was the darkest day of their lives. The house was quiet. No laughter. No smell of fresh bread. Only silence, heavy and painful. Her chair sat there, waiting for her, but she would never sit in it again. The family gathered, tears falling freely. Even the strongest among them broke down. They couldn't bring themselves to move the chair. It stood there at the head of the table, untouched, sacred. Days turned to weeks. Weeks to months. But no matter how much time passed, nobody sat in that chair. It was as though they all feared it, as though sitting there would erase her memory, or worse, disturb something they couldn't understand. But then came that night. The night Tommy climbed onto it. The night the lights flickered. The night the frame shattered. It was the night they realized Grandma's promise was more than just sentimental. Her chair wasn't just empty, it was alive with something they hadn't yet discovered. And just as everyone sat frozen, staring at the broken frame, Aunt Clara suddenly gasped. She had seen something inside the broken frame's backing. A folded piece of paper tucked behind the photograph. Her hands shook as she bent to pick it up. The family leaned closer, their breath caught in their throats. It was Grandma's handwriting. But what message had she left behind? And that was how it all began. The empty chair was no longer just a reminder of loss. It was a mystery. A secret. A message from beyond the grave. The question was, what truth was hidden inside that folded paper? And why had Grandma wanted the chair to remain untouched? The family was about to find out. Aunt Clara's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The whole family leaned in, their hearts racing, their eyes wide. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Grandma's. Neat, slanted, and written with the same careful strokes she had used when writing birthday cards or little notes for the children's lunchboxes. "Read it aloud," whispered Emily, her voice barely audible. Clara swallowed hard. She adjusted her glasses, her fingers shaking, and began to read. "My dear family, if you are reading this, it means my chair is empty, and I have gone to rest. Do not cry for me. Instead, remember that I lived a full life with all of you as my greatest blessing. But I must tell you something I could never say while I was alive. This chair you see, the one I loved so much, carries a secret. Please do not throw it away, for inside it lies the truth I hid from you all. Follow the signs, and you will find what I left behind. With love, always, Grandma." The room went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. "What does she mean, inside the chair?" asked Tommy, his small voice breaking the silence. Uncle James rubbed his chin. "Maybe she means there's something hidden in it. Like a box or a letter. Something important." "But why didn't she just tell us before?" asked Clara, her eyes brimming with tears. "Because," whispered Emily, remembering the night Grandma had made her promise, "she wanted us to find it after she was gone." Everyone turned toward the chair. It suddenly looked different, no longer just a seat, but a puzzle, a mystery waiting to be solved. Slowly, cautiously, Uncle James stepped forward. His big hand rested on the backrest, and he gave it a gentle shake. The chair creaked but stood firm, as if guarding its secret. "What if it's nothing?" Aunt Clara whispered nervously. "What if it's just her way of making us hold on to her memory?" "No," Emily said firmly. Grandma was not the type to play games. If she said there's something here, then there is. The children huddled together, their eyes shining with excitement and fear. It felt like an adventure, but one wrapped in sadness. Finally, Uncle James crouched down and began inspecting the chair. His fingers tapped along the wooden frame, feeling for loose parts. Then, knock, knock, knock. A hollow sound came from one of the chair's legs. Gasps filled the room. "There!" cried Tommy, his voice high with excitement. "It's there." Grandma hid something inside the chair. Everyone rushed closer. Uncle James grabbed a small knife from the kitchen drawer and carefully pried open the bottom of the chair's leg. After a few tense seconds, something slid out, a small, dusty envelope. Clara covered her mouth with her hands. "Another letter," she whispered. James handed it to Emily, his hands shaking. "You read it this time." Emily tore it open gently, her eyes scanning the words. Then she read aloud, her voice trembling. "To my family, this is not just a chair. It is a reminder of promises, love, and mistakes that shaped our lives. Many years ago, I kept a secret from you all, a secret about your grandfather. You deserve to know the truth. Go to the attic under the wooden chest. There you will find what I could never say aloud. Be strong. Be united. And remember, family is everything. Grandma." The family stared at one another, stunned. "The attic?" whispered Tommy. "Yes," Emily said softly, her voice unsteady. "The attic." The attic was a place none of them liked to visit. It was dusty, dark, and filled with forgotten boxes, old clothes, and the heavy smell of mothballs. But now it had become the key to unlocking Grandma's mystery. Slowly, one by one, they climbed the creaky wooden ladder. Uncle James went first, then Emily, then the others. The younger children stayed close, holding hands. The attic was colder than they remembered. Cobwebs hung in the corners, and beams of moonlight slipped in through tiny cracks in the roof. The wooden chest sat in the far corner, large and heavy, just as Grandma had written. "There it is," Clara whispered. They approached it slowly, as if it might jump at them. James knelt and tried to lift the lid, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. "Of course it is," he muttered. "Wait," Emily said, remembering something. She hurried back down the ladder, into Grandma's room, and opened the drawer of her nightstand. Inside, tucked in the corner, was a tiny brass key. When she brought it back, everyone held their breath as James slid the key into the lock. With a soft click, the chest opened. The family leaned in together. Inside were stacks of old letters, photographs, and a small wooden box. The air around them seemed to thicken as James lifted the box out carefully and placed it on the floor. "Should we open it?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. "We have to," Emily said. James lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in a faded silk cloth, was a gold locket and a letter tied with a red ribbon. Emily unfolded the letter with trembling hands. "My beloved family, inside this locket lies the truth of your grandfather. The man you knew as a kind, gentle soul had another life before you. He carried a burden, a secret I swore to protect. But I can no longer keep it hidden. The truth belongs to you now. Open the locket and you will understand. But beware, the truth may change the way you see everything." A heavy silence fell over the attic. "What does she mean?" Clara whispered. James picked up the locket. His fingers shook as he tried to open it, but the clasp was stiff, as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Finally, with a sharp click, it popped open. Inside was a tiny, worn photograph. The family gasped. It wasn't a picture of Grandpa. It was a picture of Grandma with another man, smiling, their hands tightly held. And on the back of the photo, written in Grandma's handwriting, were the words, "Forgive me." His name was William. The attic went dead silent. "William?" Emily whispered. Who is William?" Nobody had ever heard the name before. Grandpa had never mentioned it. Grandma had never spoken of it. The truth hung heavy in the air. Grandma had loved another man. But who was he? And why had she hidden him from them? As the family stood frozen in shock, a loud thud suddenly echoed from the far side of the attic. The children screamed. Something had fallen over in the darkness. Everyone whipped their heads toward the sound, only to see the shadow of a tall figure moving behind the stacks of boxes. The shadow in the attic loomed large against the dim light, moving slowly between the boxes stacked high like crooked towers. Everyone froze, their breath caught in their throats. The silence was deafening, only the sound of the old house creaking under their feet echoed around them. Who's there?" Uncle James's voice cracked as he stepped forward, holding up the lantern. His other hand gripped the locket tightly, as though it could protect him. The shadow stopped. For a long, tense moment, it didn't move. Then suddenly, a tall figure stepped out from behind the boxes. The family gasped. It wasn't a stranger. It was Michael, Grandma's youngest son. Michael. Aunt Clara nearly screamed. You scared us half to death. He held up his hands, looking guilty. I didn't mean to. I came up earlier today. I knew about the chest. The family erupted with questions. You knew about it? James demanded. How? Emily asked. Michael sighed, rubbing his forehead. Because Grandma told me. Years ago. The words hit them like thunder. She told you. Clara's voice shook with anger. And you never said a word? I couldn't, Michael said firmly, his eyes starting to the children. She made me promise. She said the family wasn't ready. Emily clenched her fists. Not ready? She's gone now, Michael. And we just found out Grandma loves someone else, someone named William. Do you know who he was? Michael hesitated. His lips pressed into a tight line, and his eyes filled with something like shame. Yes, he whispered. I know. The attic went silent again. Everyone stared at him, waiting, their hearts pounding. Finally, Michael spoke. William was Grandma's first love. Before she met Dad. Before she ever became the woman you all knew. The words sank heavy into the room. She never told us, Emily said softly, tears filling her eyes. Michael nodded. She didn't want to hurt anyone. And she never wanted to dishonor Dad's memory. But William, he wasn't just anyone. Then who is he? James demanded. Michael's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He was Dad's brother. The family froze. The world seemed to stop. What? Clara's voice trembled. Dad's brother. Michael nodded, his eyes downcast. Yes, our Uncle William. The one we never met. The one Dad never spoke about. Shock ripped through the room. The children looked confused, the adults horrified. That's impossible, James muttered. Dad never had a brother. He was an only child. Michael shook his head. No, he did. But they had a falling out long before we were born. Something so deep, so painful, that Dad cut him out of his life forever. And Grandma, she carried that secret to her grave. The locket in James's hand suddenly felt heavier. The photograph of Grandma with William took on an entirely new meaning. She loved her husband's brother? Clara whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. How could she? She chose Dad in the end, Michael said softly. That's what she always told me. She loved both men in different ways. But she chose loyalty. She chose family. Still, William never truly left her heart. The revelation shattered the family. It felt like the ground beneath them had cracked open, spilling secrets that had been buried for decades. The tension in the attic was suffocating. The children huddled together, sensing the heaviness even if they didn't fully understand. What happened to William? Emily finally asked, her voice trembling. Where is he now? Michael sighed, his shoulders heavy with guilt. I don't know. The last Grandma heard of him, he had moved to another town. She never saw him again. But she always kept that locket. She said it was her reminder of choices, of sacrifices, of love that could never be. The family fell into silence, the weight of Grandma's hidden life pressing down on them. But then Tommy, the youngest, spoke up in his small, trembling voice. Maybe that's why Grandma wanted us to find this. So we'd know her heart wasn't perfect. So we'd understand her better. His words struck deep. For all her love, all her kindness, Grandma had been human too. She had carried pain, regret, and secrets. She wasn't just the warm smile at the head of the table, she was a woman with a past. And yet, why had she made it so important to keep the chair? Why the chest? Why the mystery? The family descended from the attic, shaken and quiet. The locket sat in the middle of the dining table now, next to Grandma's empty chair. Nobody touched it. Nobody could. That night, sleep did not come easily. Questions haunted them. Memories played in their minds. And for some, anger brewed. James couldn't stop pacing the living room, muttering under his breath. Clara cried softly in her room. Emily sat awake, staring at the locket, wondering how much more they didn't know. And then, a loud crash jolted everyone awake. It came from the dining room. The family rushed out of their rooms, their footsteps pounding the floor, their hearts racing. When they reached the table, their blood ran cold. Grandma's chair, her sacred chair, had fallen over. The shawl that always hung on its back was crumpled on the floor. And the locket was gone. Gasps filled the room. No, no, no. Emily cried, dropping to her knees, frantically searching the floor. It was right here. James shouted, his voice panicked. The children clung to Clara, their eyes wide with fear. The family searched under the table, across the floor, even in the corners of the room, but the locket had vanished. It doesn't make sense, James whispered, his face pale. Things don't just disappear. Clara trembled. Unless Grandma took it back. Her words sent chills down everyone's spine. Was it possible? Could the spirit of Grandma still linger in the chair, watching over them, keeping her secrets even now? The room grew colder, the shadows darker. The ticking of the clock grew louder, echoing like a heartbeat. And then Tommy whispered, his small voice shaking. Look. Everyone turned. On the wall above the empty chair, new words had appeared in faint chalky writing, as if traced by an unseen hand. It read, "The truth is not finished." The family stared in horror, frozen in place. The locket was gone. The chair was overturned. And now, Grandma's ghostly message lingered in the air. The truth was not finished. What more had she hidden? And what was she trying to make them see? The words on the wall glowed faintly in the dim light of the dining room. The truth is not finished. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Clara clutched the children close to her chest, her eyes wide with terror. James stood frozen, his fists clenched, as though ready to fight the air itself. Emily's lips trembled as she whispered, "This can't be real. It can't be." Tommy, however, stared at the message with wide eyes, not afraid, but curious. "Grandma's trying to talk to us," he said softly. "She wants us to keep looking." "Don't say that," Clara hissed, her voice sharp. "Don't you dare say that. This is not normal." Chairs falling, lockets disappearing, words on the wall? It's not right. James took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, though his hands shook. No, Tommy's right. Grandma wanted us to find the truth. She left signs for us. The locket, the letters, the attic. And now this. She's guiding us. But guiding us to what? Emily asked, her eyes filling with tears. To destroy everything we thought we knew about her? About Grandpa? About our family? Silence fell again. The ticking clock on the wall grew louder, echoing through the room like a drum. Finally, Michael spoke. His voice was low, steady. "The truth is not finished. That means there's more. Something she hasn't told us yet. And if she wanted us to know, we have no choice but to keep going." The family exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to admit it, but deep down, they all knew Grandma's secrets weren't done with them yet. The next morning, the sunlight did little to chase away the heaviness in the house. Breakfast was quiet. Nobody touched their food. The chair had been lifted back into place, but it sat heavier than ever at the head of the table, as though daring someone to sit in it. Nobody did. The writing on the wall, though faint, was still there. The truth is not finished. It stared back at them, haunting every bite of toast, every sip of tea. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "We need to check the attic again." Clara dropped her fork. "Absolutely not. I'm not stepping foot in that place again." "We have to," Emily insisted. "Grandma told us to follow the signs." The locket disappeared, but maybe she left something else behind. James nodded. "She's right. If we stop now, we'll never understand what she was trying to tell us." Clara looked around the table, her eyes desperate. "And what if it tears us apart? Haven't we already suffered enough? Isn't Grandma's death enough pain for this family?" Her words cut deep. For a moment, nobody responded. Then Tommy, his voice quiet but firm, spoke up. "Grandma wouldn't hurt us. She loved us too much. She just wants us to know the truth." The room went silent. In the end, it was decided. That evening, they would return to the attic. The sun set and darkness fell again over the house. The family gathered at the base of the attic ladder, their faces pale, their eyes nervous. James climbed first, lantern in hand, the wooden steps groaning under his weight. Emily followed, then Michael, Clara, and finally the children, clinging tightly to each other. The attic looked the same, dusty, dim, filled with shadows. But somehow it felt heavier, darker, as though the air itself was holding its breath. The chest still sat in the corner, empty now except for scraps of yellowing paper. "Where do we even start?" Michael muttered. Emily scanned the room, her eyes catching on the stacks of boxes along the far wall. She said the truth wasn't finished. Maybe there are more letters, more clues hidden here. They began searching. Dust filled the air as boxes were opened, old clothes pulled aside, and forgotten trinkets scattered across the floor. Each item carried memories, some sweet, some bitter. But then Clara gasped. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the back of the attic. There, carved faintly into one of the wooden beams, were words none of them had noticed before. It read, "Forgive William." The family froze. "Forgive William?" James repeated, his voice harsh. "For what?" Michael's eyes darkened. "For breaking our family apart. For stealing Grandma's heart. For whatever happened between him and Dad." Emily traced the carving with her fingers. The wood was old, the letters faded. "Grandma wrote this. She must have done it years ago. But why hide it up here?" Clara whispered. "Because she couldn't say it aloud," Michael replied. "Because she was ashamed." The discovery left them shaken. They descended the attic in silence, their minds spinning with questions. Back in the dining room, the atmosphere grew heavier. The carving only deepened the mystery. Emily sat by the chair, staring at it. "She wants us to forgive him. That's what this is about. She wants us to forgive William. Forgive a man we've never even met?" James snapped. "How can we forgive someone we don't know? Someone who broke our father's heart, who nearly destroyed our family." "Because Grandma asked us to," Emily said softly. Her words silenced him. Clara shook her head. "This is too much. First the locket, then the photograph, then this. What's next? What else did she hide?" As if in answer, the lights flickered again. The air grew cold. And then, the locket reappeared. It lay neatly on the seat of Grandma's chair, shining faintly in the dim light. The family gasped, stepping back in horror and awe. James picked it up with trembling hands. It was cold, ice cold. On the back of the locket, new words were etched into the gold. Words that hadn't been there before. It read, "Find him." The room fell deathly silent. Emily's voice broke the silence, trembling with fear and awe. "She wants us to find William." The children clung tighter to Clara. James dropped into a chair, his face pale. Michael's hands shook as he stared at the locket. "Find him?" Clara whispered. "But he's probably dead by now. He'd be almost as old as Grandma." Michael shook his head slowly. "Maybe, or maybe not. Either way, Grandma won't rest until we try." The family stared at the chair, at the locket, at the words on the wall. The truth was not finished. And now, Grandma had given them their next task. They had to find William. The locket lay cold and heavy in James's trembling hands. The words etched on its back shone faintly under the dining room light. "Find him." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The house felt alive again, as if Grandma's spirit was watching every breath they took. The empty chair at the head of the table seemed more powerful than ever, almost like a throne guarding its secrets. Clara broke the silence first, her voice quivering. "This is madness. You all see what's happening, don't you? This isn't normal. First the wall, then the carving, now this. We're chasing ghosts." James slammed the table, making everyone jump. "We don't have a choice. She won't stop until we do what she asked." "But she's gone," Clara snapped. Tears spilled from her eyes. "She's gone, James. Why can't you let her rest?" "She won't rest," Emily whispered. Her eyes were fixed on the chair, her hands trembling. "Don't you see? Grandma's soul is tied to this truth. If we ignore it, she'll never be at peace. And neither will we." The children huddled close, their small faces pale. Tommy looked up at the adults with wide, tearful eyes. "Then we have to find him," he said simply. We have to find William." The words, though spoken by a child, hit everyone hard. That night, nobody slept. They gathered in the living room, trying to figure out how to even begin searching for a man who might have been dead for decades. Michael finally stood. "I'll start tomorrow. Grandma once told me William lived in a small town by the river. I don't know if he's still there, but it's the only clue we have." James frowned. "And what if he's long gone? What if we dig up more pain than answers?" Emily looked at him firmly. "Then at least we'll know we tried. That's all Grandma wanted from us, to try." Clara shook her head, hugging the children close. "You're going to drag this family into the past, into secrets that were buried for a reason." But deep down, even she knew, there was no stopping it. Grandma's empty chair wouldn't let them. The next morning, Emily and Michael set off. James went with them, unwilling to let his siblings face the unknown alone. Clara stayed behind with the children, though her heart ached with fear. The small town by the river was quiet, with cobblestone streets and houses that looked older than time. They asked around carefully, showing the photograph from the locket, Grandma and William together, smiling like young lovers. Most shook their heads. But an old shopkeeper paused, squinting at the picture. "That man looks like William Harris," he said slowly. "Used to live in a cabin near the riverbank. Haven't seen him in years, though." The family's hearts skipped a beat. "He's real," Emily whispered. "He was real." They hurried to the river, following the narrow dirt path that wound through tall grass and trees. At last, they saw it, a small, weathered cabin, its roof sagging, its windows cracked. James stepped forward cautiously, his boots crunching against the gravel. "If he's alive, he's in there." They approached the door, their breaths shallow. James knocked. Silence. He knocked again, louder this time. "William? Are you there?" Still nothing. Emily's heart raced. Maybe he's not here. Maybe. Suddenly, the door creaked open. An old man stood there, his hair silver, his face lined with deep wrinkles. His eyes, sharp, piercing, looked at them with both suspicion and sorrow. "Yes," he said, his voice gravelly. For a moment, none of them could speak. Finally, Emily whispered, "Are you William?" The man's eyes darkened. He didn't answer right away. Then he sighed heavily, leaning on the doorframe. "Yes, I'm William." The family's hearts pounded. They had found him. The old man let them inside. The cabin was small, filled with dust and silence. Photographs hung on the walls, landscapes, rivers, and a few old portraits. Emily couldn't stop staring at him. He looked so much like their late grandfather, yet different, softer somehow. "Why are you here?" William asked, lowering himself into a creaky chair. "Nobody's come looking for me in years." James clenched his fists, his anger bubbling. "Because you left us. You left Dad, you left Grandma, you left everything. And now she's making us find you." William's eyes flickered with pain. Grandma rose, Emily said gently. "She's gone now. But she left us letters. She left us this." She held up the locket. The old man's eyes widened. He reached for it with trembling hands. "She kept it," he whispered. His voice cracked, and tears filled his eyes. "All these years, she kept it." For a moment, the family saw not a stranger, but a man broken by love and loss. "She asked us to forgive you," Emily said softly. William's shoulders shook. He covered his face with his hands. "Forgive me? After what I did? What did you do?" James demanded harshly. William looked up slowly, his eyes red with tears. "I loved her. And she loved me. But she chose your father instead. I tried to let her go, but my heart couldn't. It nearly tore us apart, me and my brother. And when she finally chose him, I left. I couldn't stay. I couldn't watch them build a life together." The room went silent. For decades, this man had carried the same wound Grandma had. Love, regret, and sorrow bound them together, even though life had torn them apart. But before Emily could speak, before James could argue, a sudden gust of wind swept through the cabin. The lantern flickered. The locket slipped from Emily's hands, clattering onto the floor. When William picked it up, he gasped. The words etched on its back had changed again. It now read, "He must tell the truth." The family froze. William's hands shook as he stared at the locket. His breathing grew heavy, uneven. "There's more," he whispered. His voice cracked. "There's something I never told anyone. Not even Rose." The family leaned closer, their hearts pounding, bracing themselves. William's lips trembled as he opened his mouth to speak. But before he could say the words, the old cabin's window shattered with a deafening crash. Glass flew everywhere. The wind howled. And on the broken wooden wall, scratched by something unseen, appeared chilling words. "Don't let him finish." The family screamed. The message glared at them like a warning. Was it Grandma's spirit, or something else? And why didn't she want William to finish his story? The wind howled through the shattered window, whipping through the tiny cabin like a living thing. The family ducked, shielding themselves from flying splinters of glass. The words carved into the wall glared at them like a curse. "Don't let him finish." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Emily's voice finally broke the silence, barely above a whisper. "Grandma, why would she write that? She wanted us to find him, but now she doesn't want him to speak." William's hands shook violently as he clutched the locket. His wrinkled face went pale, his lips trembling. "It's not Rose," he rasped. "It can't be her. She would never silence me." James clenched his jaw, his fists tight. "Then who? Who else could be doing this?" The children whimpered, clinging to Clara, who had instinctively pulled them close. She kept her eyes fixed on the wall, her breath shallow. Michael, his voice low and grim, said, maybe it's not just Grandma's spirit in this house. Maybe something else followed us here." The thought sent a chill racing through everyone. The family sat huddled in the cabin, lantern light flickering against the broken glass. William's eyes stayed on the wall, haunted. "I need to tell you," he whispered. "Before it's too late. Before whatever that is stops me again." "No," Clara said sharply. Her voice cracked. "Didn't you see the warning? If you say it, something bad will happen. I can feel it." But Emily leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Clara, Grandma brought us here for a reason. Maybe the truth is the only way to end this." The room grew heavy with silence. Finally, William nodded slowly. "All right, then listen." He took a deep breath, his old hands trembling as he spoke. "There was something your grandmother never knew. Something about your grandfather." The family leaned closer, their hearts pounding. William's eyes filled with tears. "Your grandfather, my brother, didn't just win Rose's heart. He betrayed me. He lied." James's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" William swallowed hard. His voice dropped low, almost to a whisper. "He told her I was gone. That I had left for good. But it wasn't true. I was still here. I never stopped waiting for her. I never stopped loving her. He stole her from me with lies." The words hit the family like a thunderclap. Emily gasped. Clara covered her mouth in shock. James's face burned red with anger. "You're saying..." Emily's voice trembled. "Grandpa tricked her? He lied to Grandma about you?" William nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. "Yes. She thought I had abandoned her. But I never did. I never would have." Tears spilled down his face, his voice breaking. "I lost her, not because she chose him, but because she believed his lies. And she died never knowing the truth." The room shook as if the walls themselves felt the weight of his confession. Suddenly, the lantern flickered wildly. The shadows stretched across the cabin walls, twisting like hands reaching for them. Then came a sound, soft at first, then louder. A sob. It was coming from Grandma's empty chair. The family froze. The chair sat against the corner, rocking ever so slightly, though nobody touched it. The sobs grew louder, heart-wrenching, filled with grief. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "It's her, it's Grandma." The chair rocked harder, the sobs turning into wails. The air grew heavy, pressing against their chests. The children screamed, covering their ears. William stood shakily, his voice desperate. "Rose, listen to me. It wasn't your fault. You were lied to." The wailing stopped abruptly. The chair went still. And then silence. The silence was worse than the sound. It was the kind of silence that felt alive, like something was waiting in the darkness. James slammed his hand on the table, his voice breaking the tension. "This is too much. We shouldn't have come here. We're digging into things that should have stayed buried." Emily turned on him, her eyes fierce. "No, can't you see? This is what Grandma wanted. She wanted us to hear the truth, to know the pain she carried all her life. We can't stop now." Clara shook her head, her arms still wrapped around the children. "And what if the truth destroys us, Emily? What if that's why she didn't want him to finish?" But William shook his head, his voice sharp for the first time. "No. The only thing that destroys families is lies. Truth heals even if it hurts." His words lingered in the air like a judgment. Hours passed. They stayed in the cabin, too shaken to move. Emily tried to comfort the children. James paced the room. Clara prayed silently, and William sat slumped in his chair, exhausted by the weight of his confession. When morning finally came, the sunlight pouring through the broken window brought no peace. Instead, it revealed something new. Scratched into the wooden floor beneath Grandma's rocking chair were fresh words. "He hasn't told you everything." Emily's heart stopped. She pointed at the floor with a shaking finger. "Look." The family gathered, their stomachs twisting with dread. William's face went pale. His hands clutched his knees as he whispered, "No, no more." But James grabbed his arm roughly. "You're not stopping now. What else are you hiding?" William closed his eyes, his face wrinkling with pain. "If I tell you the rest, none of us will ever see peace again." Emily grabbed his hand, her voice soft but pleading. "Please, William. For Grandma. For us. Tell us." The old man's lips trembled. His voice cracked as he said, "There's something about your father, something Rose never knew. Something that would have broken her heart if she had." The family leaned closer, their hearts in their throats. William's eyes filled with tears. He opened his mouth to speak. But before he could, the chair began rocking violently on its own, slamming against the floor with a deafening bang, over and over, like a warning. The children screamed. Clara clutched them tight, sobbing. The locket flew out of William's hands, clattering onto the floor. When Emily picked it up, her blood ran cold. The words had changed again. This time, they read, "Don't trust him." The family turned slowly toward William. His eyes widened in horror, his body trembling. "No, no, it's not true. Don't listen to it." But the family just stared at him, torn between fear, doubt, and the need for answers. And in that moment, for the first time since they found him, William looked less like a grieving old man and more like a man hiding something darker. The words glared up at them from the locket like glowing embers. "Don't trust him." The cabin fell into a tense silence, broken only by the sound of the rocking chair creaking as it finally slowed to a stop. Emily's hand shook as she held the locket tighter. She looked at William, his eyes wide, his face pale, his chest rising and falling in panicked breaths. "William," she whispered. "What does this mean? Why would Grandma warn us about you?" "I don't know." William cried, his voice cracking like dry wood snapping. He stumbled toward them, his hands trembling. She wouldn't turn you against me. Don't you see? Something's twisting her words. Something evil is trying to poison you against me." But James wasn't convinced. His jaw clenched, his eyes burning with suspicion. "Or maybe you're the one twisting everything. Maybe you're not the victim you keep pretending to be." Clara gasped softly. "James." But James pressed on, his voice sharp. "Think about it. First he says Grandpa lied. Then he claims Grandma never knew the truth. And now this? He's hiding something, and whatever it is, it's big enough for Grandma herself to try to stop him." William's frail body shook with anger. "I loved Rose more than life itself. You don't understand what we lost. Don't you dare say I've betrayed her." "Then prove it," Emily said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Tell us the rest. Whatever you've been hiding, say it now." The family leaned closer, their breaths caught in their throats. William's eyes darted from face to face, Emily's pleading, Clara's fearful, James's accusing. His lips trembled as he whispered, "If I tell you, you'll hate me. All of you. Better we hate you for the truth, James snapped, than love you for a lie. The room felt suffocating. The lantern flickered again, shadows stretching across William's wrinkled face. Finally, he sank into the chair opposite Grandma's, his voice barely audible. "It wasn't only your grandfather who lied," he said at last. "I did too." The family stiffened. "What do you mean?" Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. William's eyes filled with tears. "When Rose married him, I couldn't let go. I told myself it was fate's mistake. That one day she would see the truth and come back to me." Emily felt her stomach twist. "William, what did you do?" His voice broke as he confessed. "I wrote her letters. Dozens of them. Pretending to be him. I told her things that made her believe he was cruel, that he didn't love her. I thought she would leave him, that she would come back to me. But she never did." Emily's blood ran cold. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. James's eyes blazed with fury. "You tricked her," James shouted. You pretended to be Grandpa?" William's head bowed, his shoulders shaking. "I thought I was saving her. But instead, I was tearing her apart." The cabin seemed to breathe with them, heavy and restless. The rocking chair gave a sudden creak, though nobody touched it. The children whimpered, clinging to Clara. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "That's why she suffered, isn't it? That's why she wrote those letters we found, those letters full of pain. She thought Grandpa didn't love her, when all along it was you feeding her lies." The truth hit them like a storm. James stepped forward, fists clenched. "You destroyed her life. You're the reason she lived with so much sorrow." William raised his head, tears streaming down his face. "No, don't you see? I loved her. I couldn't stand seeing her with him. I just wanted her to see me." "But she didn't," Emily said, her voice breaking. "She never did. And, because of you, she died with a broken heart." The silence that followed was unbearable. The family stared at William, their grief turning into something darker, betrayal. The night deepened. Nobody spoke. The children finally fell asleep in Clara's lap, but the adults sat awake, staring at William as though seeing him for the first time. The chair creaked again. This time, it rocked gently as if an invisible figure sat in it. The family watched in silence as the chair rocked, slow and steady. Emily swallowed hard. "Grandma, is that you?" The chair stopped instantly. And then the words scratched themselves into the wall above the fireplace, jagged and clear. "He isn't finished." William's breath hitched. His voice was barely a whisper. "Oh God, she knows." Emily turned to him, her face pale. "What else? What aren't you telling us?" William buried his face in his hands, sobbing. "If I speak it, she'll never forgive me. None of you will." James leaned in close, his voice low and dangerous. "Then maybe you don't deserve forgiveness." The tension was unbearable. Emily could feel her heart hammering in her chest, torn between wanting to hear the truth and fearing what it would do to them. Clara held the children tighter, whispering prayers under her breath. Finally, Emily said, "William, please. Just say it. No more secrets. No more half-truths. Let us carry the burden together." But William shook his head violently, tears pouring down his wrinkled cheeks. No, if I tell you, it will destroy this family forever." Before anyone could speak again, the lantern exploded with a sharp pop, plunging the cabin into darkness. The children woke screaming, Clara gasping in terror. The only light came from the moon through the shattered window. In that silver glow, the family saw something that froze their blood. Grandma's empty chair was no longer empty. A dark, shadowy figure sat in it, its head bowed, its shape faint but unmistakable. The figure raised its head slowly. And though it had no face, the voice that filled the room was clear, cold, and heart-shattering. "Ask him what he did to your father." The shadow in Grandma's chair leaned forward, the moonlight cutting through its hollow form. Its voice echoed like wind through an empty church. "Ask him what he did to your father." The family froze. Emily's breath caught in her throat. James's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Clara shielded the children, her body trembling. All eyes turned to William. His face drained of color, his lips trembling as though words fought their way out. But he stayed silent. "Answer her," James roared, his voice shaking with rage. William's shoulders sagged. His tears dripped onto the wooden floor. "I prayed this moment would never come," he whispered. "But she will never rest until the truth is spoken." Emily stepped closer, her eyes wide. "William, what did you do to our father?" The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then William lifted his head, and his voice cracked as he spoke the words that shattered them all. "I sent him away." The room erupted. "What?" Clara gasped, nearly dropping the child in her arms. "You what?" James thundered, his whole body trembling. William's voice broke as he confessed. "When he was just a boy, your father, he found out about the letters. He discovered that I had been writing to Rose, tricking her into thinking her husband didn't love her. He confronted me. He swore he would tell her everything." His eyes filled with torment. "I couldn't let that happen. If Rose knew the truth, she would hate me forever. So I convinced your grandfather to send him away to a boarding school far from here. I told them it was for his future, but it was a lie. I just wanted to keep him quiet, to bury the truth." Emily shook her head in disbelief. You exiled him from his own family? You stole his childhood." William sobbed, clutching his chest. "I thought I was protecting myself, but I destroyed him. He grew up alone, believing his parents didn't want him. He carried that wound until the day he died." The family's cries filled the cabin. James slammed his fist against the wall, shouting through his tears. "You ruined his life. You ruined all of ours." The shadow in the rocking chair began to rise, its form growing taller, darker, filling the cabin with an icy chill. The voice boomed again. "You broke us, William. You stole my joy, my love, and my son. You left me to die with sorrow in my heart." The walls groaned as if the house itself wept. The lantern shards on the floor flickered with unnatural light, glowing like fireflies in the dark. Emily dropped to her knees, her tears falling fast. "Grandma, please, let us fix this. Don't let the past destroy what's left of us." The shadow paused. The chair rocked once, twice, then stopped. Her voice softened, though it still carried the weight of sorrow. "You cannot erase what has been done. But you can choose to love each other better than we were loved. Do not carry the same chains." The family clung to one another, sobbing. James gripped Emily's hand. Clara kissed the children's heads. Even William, broken and ashamed, crawled to the foot of Grandma's chair, whispering, "Forgive me, Rose. Please, forgive me." The shadow leaned forward, its form flickering like smoke in the wind. For the first time, the outline of a smile appeared, not of joy, but of peace. The chair rocked one final time. Then the shadow vanished, leaving only the empty chair in the moonlight. The family sat in silence, listening to the stillness. And though the chair was empty again, the pain in their hearts was not. Days later, they buried William beside Grandma's grave. The children placed flowers on both graves, their little hands trembling as they whispered prayers. As the family walked away, Emily turned back one last time. The two headstones stood side by side, the wind rustling the grass. And for a moment, she swore she saw the chair rocking gently in the distance. Life lesson. Secrets can destroy families, but truth, no matter how painful, is the only path to healing. Love must be honest, or it becomes a burden that haunts even after death. And though Grandma's chair sat empty, the memory of her love and her pain remained forever in their hearts.